So good evening, everyone, and very welcome to SEPS. It's a great pleasure to see so many people in the room tonight. It's really clear that COVID is gone, and we don't want to hear any more about it. I'm really pleased to open this event. The topic is very high in the European agenda, and it concerns everyone, implementation and usability of the EU Taxonomy. What can the EU platform on sustainable finance do? I'm really pleased to organize this event in cooperation with CDP, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, with whom actually we have a long-standing cooperation. Only this year, this is the third event. Until now, I think it's the most successful. I see the room really crowded, and for this, I'm really grateful to Felice Simonelli and his team who have done a great effort and were instrumental to reach out to the platform. And we are really pleased to have this event in cooperation with the platform. So I won't say much more than this. I'm sure we will have a great discussion with different points of view about how the situation can evolve and how the taxonomy can really be implemented and used. And with that, I would like to give the floor to Martina Colombo. She is the head of European Affairs at the CDP for a short introduction. Martina, floor is yours.
Thank you, Cinzia. Good evening, everyone. We're very happy to have a full house tonight. And I'm honored to, let's say, host you in this first event, because it's my first, although it's the fifth from the series, right? Felice is... All right, so thank you, Cinzia, for hosting us. And it's really a great cooperation that we have between SEPS and CDP. It's not new, and it's, let's say, developing state-of-the-art discussions on topics of European interest. We want the debate to be relevant and involving for all the EU stakeholders that are, interested in making Europe better. So for us, as MPBIs, it's a way to exchange, and in particular, when it comes to sustainability topics, you may know that basically we try to coordinate and cooperate as much as possible. So one of the flagship initiatives that we have is called JICE, the Joint Initiative on Circular Economy, where actually 6 MPBIs, it's the French ones, CDC and BPI France, the Polish one, BGK, the Spanish one, ECO, InvestNL, from the Netherlands, KfW, and ourselves from Italy, aim to provide and coordinate the reporting in long-term financing for projects that accelerate the transition to the circular economy at European scale. So our commitment to sustainability is also reflected by our commitment to the work and objectives of the EU platform on sustainable finance. We took part as a CDP also in the works of its predecessor, the Technical Expert Group on Sustainable Finance, that was launched by the Commission back in 2018, and it brought to this successful second edition of the joint effort on EU taxonomy. So the idea tonight is to arrange this event is to discuss usability of the EU taxonomy, how it can be traced to our commitments towards the foundational values, as well as the work done so far by the platform. So I hope that you will find it interesting, and with no further ado, let's deep dive into the EU taxonomy. Cinzia, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martina. I would like now to start really this event, and it is organized in 2 parts. We will have a fireside chat, and for this I would like to invite Sean Kinney, CEO of the Climate Bonds Initiative and member of the platform on sustainable finance, and Marcel Haag, he's Director, Horizontal Policy Director General for Financial Stability, Financial Services and Capital Markets Union at the European Commission. A long title. The floor is yours.
Marcel, join me on the stage, please. We're doing a first introduction with Marcel giving some background, and then we'll go to speakers. My fellow panelists will join me up on stage. Marcel and I go back a long way. I was a member of the EU High-Level Expert Group in Sustainable Finance in 2016-17, which kicked this off. Out of that, the FSMA, I have to say, took the bait and said, yes, we want to do something about climate change, and actually introduced the Sustainable Finance Action Plan, which has been incredible. It kicked off a global movement of ministries of finance moving on this issue. And then the taxonomy was one of the elements about that. Marcel, tell us a little bit about what the aim is and what FSMA's intent of all of this is as background before we get into the usability conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Sean, and it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. Yeah, indeed. I mean, we've come a long way in sustainable finance in the last 5 years. In 2018, when we started this journey, markets expected from us to provide guidance and transparency on investment in sustainability, and we responded positively to this with our action plan. And in the course of those 5 years, we established an EU taxonomy, which is now one of the, if not the most comprehensive taxonomy in the world, with more than 240 activities and covering 16 of the most relevant economic activities. It is covering not only climate and adaptation and mitigation objectives, but also the 4 non-climate related environmental objectives since the summer of this year. And that is something we should not forget. It is accompanied, complemented by a very comprehensive disclosures and reporting framework for both non-financials and real economy corporations, which is covering ESG criteria. So that's what we've put in place. We now...
This is an amazing innovation. I mean, I still remember being surprised at the time when FSMA said, we're going to take this idea of disclosure around carbon, the TCFD, if you all remember that acronym, and we're going to make it disclosure around sustainable investments, proactive, what you're doing, which has now become an amazing milestone in terms of thinking about this, right? Not to mention a common language. In ESG, as you said, we still see, if you look at how MSCI categorises the top 500 companies in the stock exchange and Sustainalytics does, there's no overlap. They have different methodologies. So you've brought in a common language around climate, right? Just amazing.
I think that is the ultimate value added of a public intervention in that area. Is we have the possibility to harmonize what otherwise would result in competing disclosure and reporting expectations, and also competing and diverse methodologies when it comes to assessing what is sustainable and what is not. I think here public authorities have the possibility of setting the standards and making the market more transparent and ultimately also more liquid. So that is the big benefit. And we are now at a stage when we start applying this framework. So up until now, it was the theory. It was the theory pretty much. And now we start gradually applying this framework. And I must say the first data that are coming in are very positive. So the markets are picking up on the taxonomy and are using are using the taxonomy, and we expect that that going forward, the taxonomy will be used even more because we added activities, and obviously also, and I should have said that in the first place, because the industry is making increased efforts. So that in itself will lead to the bulk of the results that we're seeing. But at the same time, our contribution is we add more activities, the understanding of the framework increases, and also the data will improve and is improving at an impressive pace.
You used the phrase outside when we were talking, learning by doing. It wasn't a matter of trying to make it perfect, it's a matter of improving as we go. Can you tell us a bit how that's playing out? And of course, I need you to talk about the mandate you've given the platform around usability.
Totally. Now, indeed, I mean, we are breaking new ground here. So this is all new territory, and that means we have to listen to the feedback that we get, that we have to learn as we play along. We have to correct what is wrong as we complete the framework. So all of this is very necessary. So what we need is an agile governance of the sustainable finance framework, and that's what we are committed to do. We think that now at this point, usability is a key priority, and making sure that those who want to benefit from the framework can actually use it properly. And in that context, we're doing different things. We are reaching out proactively to stakeholders. We are providing guidance in the form of Q&As, in the form of IT tools that should simplify the application of the framework. And we have asked the platform for sustainable finance to make usability one of its key priorities next to the further development of the taxonomy. We think that there are different points on which we still need to reflect. There are complex questions related to the usability of the framework when it comes to the taxonomy criteria, but also very importantly when it comes to SMEs who are in a peculiar situation, less well resourced, but still often part of complex international value chains, which makes it difficult for SMEs to comply with the framework. But at the same time, we want SMEs to benefit from the framework. They should be among the key beneficiaries of green finance and sustainable finance.
We're going to hear a little bit more from Gerhard in a minute from SME United. For those of you who don't know, the Platform on Sustainable Finance was created by the Parliamentary Act around the taxonomy as an expert group that would continue to exist ad infinitum, but it gets refreshed and renewed every couple of years. And so there's a few inquiries the platform was pursuing, and of course that's what a number of us in this room are members of. Mea culpa, I'm one of those people, as is Gerhard, as is Clemence, who's going to speak in a minute. Now, we of course have an interregnum because of the parliamentary elections, the new presidency and so on. So we're not going to see anything happening in legislation for some time, probably not in 2025. But as you say, there is scope to provide guidance through frequently asked questions and so on. Is that likely to be an ongoing activity?
That will be an ongoing activity, but then this is now, of course, also the time to work with yourself and the other members of the platform to prepare further action and to make sure that the framework improves and becomes as easily applicable as possible. Addressing climate change and addressing our environmental challenges will never be an easy task. It will never, it will not lend itself to being simplistic about it. So we should not fool ourselves. It will always become a complex task, but it should not be unnecessarily complex. And that's where we need the platform, and we need stakeholder feedback to help us with that.
I mean, I'll go a bit further than that. I'll say that designing these things is a bit like designing an electric car. It's complicated in the design and construction stage. But for users, they should be able to get in and press the button and just drive off, right? That's our objective here.
That's fair. Yeah, that's
yes.
That's the objective.
We're on the same page. We will, of course, debate in the next panel how far away we are from that. But it is worth noting that we're in the middle of development of all of this thing. And it really have only just started proper implementation, right? So next, Marcel, what are your marching orders for us? What are your demands of the platform? What do you need us to do next quickly?
I think we need a simplified framework for SMEs very, 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 very urgently. We need an identification of all the inconsistency that exists that still exists in the framework, and we need good feedback on where we can help to make the framework more easily applicable, like an electric car.
Fantastic. It's very important to note, whilst we're in the midst of designing this, that the influence of the taxonomy and the disclosure regulation has been enormous globally. I found myself giving talks in central banks in Slovakia and Budapest recently, and bankers were coming up and saying how they're wrestling taxonomy. And I said, so is it a pain in the neck? They said, no, we found it's really useful because it's helped us find what is sustainable on our books, and the reporting has been driving internal engagement. That's a win. And you might not know in the audience, there are 47 countries in the world now working on taxonomies, copying the European model. Now, admittedly, they all think they're doing it better. We'll leave that aside. So there's a little bit of friendly competition, but of course, we now have the International Platform on Sustainable Finance, which FSMA is leading on, which is an association of countries. Can I get you to wrap up and say, what's the relationship with taxonomy and the international work that you're doing out of the IPSF? This is give people a sense of the global message.
Yeah, I think ideally we would wish for a convergence of all these efforts around taxonomies in the world, but to be frank, we're still far away from that. So within the platform, what we're doing is we are comparing the efforts with the help of CBI, by the way, the efforts that the different jurisdictions are making in the area of taxonomies, with a view to ensuring interoperability as an intermediate perspective on taxonomies. We think that is realistic. Convergence for the time being would be a bit too ambitious and not realistic.
Okay, fantastic. Marcel, thank you so much for being here tonight and for giving us our marching orders. I'm now keen to move on to the panel to talk about how we're going to actually meet these demands by FSMA, which are excellent, fantastic. But I think I just want to say, from my perspective anyway, we had great ideas at the H-Leg years ago, but they were just ideas. We now actually have implementation. It's fantastic to see, and it's also fantastic to see the extent to which FSMA, as an exemplary Ministry of Finance around the world, has adopted sustainable finance action plans. It is not perfect. It is very clear. It needs work. I'm going to say that, having been involved from the day one, but it is so much better than where we were 5 years ago in providing guidance and to getting a global common language. We might interoperability on the agenda, but at least we're going in the same direction. It's an enormous achievement. So congratulations, and congratulations for the work you've led in FSMA. Thank you for being here. We're good? Now, if I might welcome, or I would say goodbye to Marcel, if I might welcome my co-panelists, so if I can. First, Gerhard Hummer, who's the Director of Economic and Fiscal Policy at SME United. That means small and medium-sized enterprises, for those who don't know. And Clément Simon, who is Head of Sustainability Coordination and Governance at AXA. And yes, come and sit in the middle, Clémence. Take the centre stage. Because she's also the co-rapporteur of what's called SG1, which is a usability working group that we have working at in the platform. And then Gaia Gerardi, who's the Head of Policy and Evaluation at Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, who's the sponsor, the co-host with SEPS of this event, but most importantly is the National Development Institution of Italy. And there's one thing that's happened over the last 5 years that I feel incredibly proud of as being a European, which is the extent to which European national banks have gone green. It's gone green. I mean, like the European Investment Bank has now adopted a policy of 50% of its lending, which is a vast pipeline, has to be climate related, and the other 50% has to make sure it addresses adaptation. In other words, it can't just be entirely separate. We've said EBRD, European Bank of Reconstruction Development, done the same thing, and now we have the CDP moving in a direction with some enormous commitments to climate change. I don't know how much it is, Gaia, but I had some very big figures touted around recently. So great work.
I don't want to speak about figures right now, but for sure we took a great commitment, and climate change, adaptation and mitigation are the fourth pillar of our strategic plan 22-24. And more important than this, we decline a sustainability ESG or ESG plan, how do you want to call it, in which for the first time we fix a target for decarbonizing our portfolio. That is an enormous job that we are doing, starting from the private sector, because CDP is for the audience that maybe doesn't know, is the National Promotion Institution whose mission is to contribute to the development, the sustainable development of Italy. We are serving corporations, but also projects for international cooperation, but we are also partner of public administration. In this moment, we fix a target for decarbonizing our portfolio for corporation, not for public administration yet. And the reason why is that we have no standard that can be used in the financial sector officially done. But the taxonomy has been incredibly useful for us because while fixing...
Hang on to that. No, got to go to Clémence first about that. Because there's a whole story here, which I want you to tell about your relationship taxonomy and how it's worked there. But first, I just want to make a comment about the climate stuff. We have an incredible challenge. I mean, this is not happening because it's a good idea and feels good and so on. This is happening because climate change is happening. Because if we don't achieve our targets in Europe of reductions by 2030, and by the way, our targets are minimal reductions. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says our targets need to be higher because our global average of emission reductions needs to be 60% by 2035. That's average South Africa, Brazil, Europe, and the US. So you can see we're only going in that direction. If we don't meet those targets, we face utter catastrophe. And it's important to note that even if we do meet these targets, climate change is going to get worse. It's already baked in, it's too late. The World Meteorological Organization says we're going to have 1.7, 1.5 degrees in 2027. In the Inevitable Policy Response Project, with the Principal Responsible Investment that we're involved with, we've, in modelling done by McKinsey, shown that we can't stop at 1.5. We have a good chance of stopping at 1.8 and then bring it back down with forms of sequestration. That's the best result we can get. Understand that a world just of 1.8 is very, very different to where we are now. It means heat in Sicily will be really crazy next year. It was bad enough this year, let alone water changes and weather changes. Our future has been determined. It will be crisis after crisis after crisis. The only question is if we can stop catastrophic crises. This is why this is important. This is why the commitment of institutions like CDP, like the Commission, And like AXA, who's made some very early, strong and powerful commitments around climate change, is so important to make sure we have some kind of future for our children, which at the moment is in the balance. But of course, we're here to talk about taxonomy. But that's why we've got a taxonomy. Guidance about what to do. And at the end of the day, the phrase I use for taxonomy is it's a shopping list for the future. It tells us what we've got to invest in to meet our climate targets at this stage. Other environmental issues we will get to, but climate is the near and present danger. It's the thing we have to address most urgently. But then we've been given a mandate, learning by doing, to, as we work on this, implement it, to improve it, make it simpler, improve the usability. Clemence, tell us a bit about that mandate and tell us your thoughts so far on what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you. No, first I agree. It's important to start with the challenges, the size of the challenges ahead of us, and the roadmap, the very ambitious roadmap from the European Union, which Marcel has clearly stated, which is about really transforming the financial system. So it's not just about a few ESG products. It's really about the whole value chain. So the ambition and the framework in itself comprises a number of regulations. So of course it's the taxonomy. It's the centerpiece of a larger jigsaw, but it's also a number of other regulations which include SFDR, Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, one we have talked about a lot over the past few years, and we are talking a lot about now with a consultation on the level 1. It's the upcoming Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which will also create a number of new requirements in terms of reporting from corporates. So it's about this wide and articulated framework which the platform has been asked to contribute to work on ensuring further the usability. And bearing in mind those important challenges and this important ambition of getting to net zero by 2050. So of course for the EU as a start, but we are not an isolated, we are part of a wider ecosystem and a wider world. So what is our positioning? And I think Marcel has stated quite clearly what the Commission has given us in terms of mandate. So SMEs. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a minute. But before SMEs, it's about make sure the framework is workable. So it was good to remind everybody that it started just a few years ago, 5 years ago. So that's nothing. It started 5 years ago. Now we have this taxonomy, which comprises several economic activities. We have SFDR, so we already have several regulations which are in place. We have more which are to come. Taxonomy only started to be enforced a couple of years ago. SFDR, same thing. So, let's look at where we were just 2 years ago and where we are now. I think it's already an impressive step. And now the mandate of this platform, which gathers practitioners from the whole value chain, I think it's important to have this in mind as well. It's great to see that there are a number of us here in the room today. It's corporates, it's SMEs, it's banks, it's insurers, it's investors, it's auditors and consultants, it's data providers. And we are all I would say working together to try to come up with a number of solutions to address the challenges. Let's be honest as well, there's a lot which has been done, but there are challenges in terms of making sure the framework works properly and helps to redirect financial flows towards sustainable investment and towards the financing of the transition. So just a few highlights perhaps on what we are working on. So, and what we have been working on since March, which was the beginning of our mandate. So first of all, and actually it's very much thanks to the previous platform, we issued the last 4 objectives of the taxonomy, which was an important step. There were already a number of revisions to climate mitigation and climate adaptation delegated acts, so acknowledging some improvements which were needed. The platform has been working as well already on responses to various consultations, so the ESRS, SFDR, so the RTS and the level 1, which is ongoing. So already a lot on making sure that we will continue to improve those various regulations. And beyond this, we have been actually surveying, I would say, the industry. So there are a number of us within the platform representing those various actors within the value chain. And we have been reaching out to even more actors to try to understand what are the issues, what are the positive steps we are already seeing. And I will just perhaps share a couple of figures from this initial survey. If we look at the taxonomy reporting at the end of 2022, so it was the first year of alignment reporting for non-financial undertakings. It's not even the case at this stage for financial companies, which will start to report from end of this year on alignment. And we are already seeing that 29% in average of CapEx are taxonomy aligned for those issuers which are reporting on taxonomy. And I think it's a very positive developments already we are seeing. If we look at the utility sector only, it's 69%, which is definitely positive and showing that, the European economy is already taking steps to move in the direction of decarbonization and in the direction of, promoting those economic activities which are necessary to the transition. So definitely very positive.
So in the feedback, that's really good news. In the feedback, what did the feedback tell us we have to sort out about SMEs? I'm just curious. Tell us a bit more about the feedback and how broad the feedback was. How many contributions we've had in this process?
So we've had contributions from. I think Gerhard will be able to give us a precise number for SMEs. I think it's close to 2,000 SMEs who contributed. 2,400 when it comes to SMEs. When it comes to other stakeholder group, it was slightly less because we were more targeted in our outreach. But I think what it showed as well is definitely a better level of understanding. So we talked with various corporates, again, various financial institutions, and all of them shared a bit about their challenges, their issues when it comes to the interpretation of some of the criteria. So recurring challenges around, do no significant harm. So how do we deal with this properly, which is a very important part of the framework because it makes sure that beyond bringing a substantial contribution, an economic activity or a company will not harm the other environmental objective, and that's a very important and ambitious element of the framework, but it's not so easy to implement. So we've got this feedback. We've got a number of feedback on OPEX, which is one of the metrics of the taxonomy. So we'll be looking at how we can address this. We got some feedback on the KPIs on which financial institutions will start to report next year. So we'll also work on that. But a very interesting piece of feedback we have got, and I will come back to this idea of the value chain, is that we've seen how interlinked and how actually common a number of those challenges and issues are. So we've heard a lot about, how the contribution from SMEs is very important to banks for them to be able to report on their green asset ratio from next year. We've heard a lot from investors, and being part of AXA and more the asset management arm, I'm quite sensitive to that. We've heard a lot from investors on the importance of having reliable and ambitious reporting from corporates. We've heard a lot from corporates in terms of, again, how important SMEs are to them because they are an essential piece in their value chain. So I think this, interconnected ecosystem at EU level, and actually it goes even beyond, also shows the relevance of the platform and of all of us working together to try to come up with those solutions over the next 18 months.
Fantastic, thank you. Gerhard. Well, Marcel gave us a bit of a mandate here. Tell us a little bit out from your perspective, what's got to be done, how we take this forward.
In the invitation, you have seen that 50,000 companies will report according to Taxonomy and CSRD, and 10,000 or 11,000 have done it already. But there are 23, 25, 30 million other entities, depending on how you calculate them, which are SMEs, which are not reporting, which are not obliged at least to report, neither to taxonomy nor to the CSRD. But we have to be aware that without SMEs, this whole transition will not work. Yeah? Therefore, we have to find a solution how to involve this. And there's one big challenge where SMEs are involved, let's say, forced to be involved. This is when it comes to trickle-down effects. First, banks have started to request sustainability information from SMEs when they hand out a loan. And I'm not speaking about the small market where it's equity finance, but loan finance is the most important external finance for SMEs. Currently, what we observe on the market, what studies say, is there are banks asking, one bank 20 questions to an SME, another one 250 questions to an SME. It's a total mess, and SMEs are totally worried what comes there in this direction. This similar situation we have, and this is also proved by the results we have seen in the compendium corporate discussion, same is true in the supply chain. Large customers of SMEs in the supply chain have to ask, I have to ask questions about the sustainability of the SME to allow them to do their own reporting requirements. So what we are doing here since many years now, it's 2 years, is to work together with EFRAG on this already mentioned voluntary SME reporting standard, which should at least include, on a voluntary base, those reporting, these informations which banks and corporates has to know to fulfill their legal requirements. We will not be able to hinder them to ask for more, but at least they should be able, with this standard, to report the minimum requirements depending on micro enterprises, small enterprises, medium enterprises, etc., etc. So this is one of the most important aim of this voluntary standard, to provide SMEs with an instrument to fulfill the reporting requirements coming from the supply chain and coming from the banks when they ask for a loan. The second big challenge is, in reality, how can SMEs access green finance? We have heard now, European Investment Bank, 50% has to be green. European Investment Fund, SME window, 40% or more has to be green. Recovery and Resilience Facility, 40% has to be green. And then national programs, etc. And all of them have different requirements, what they need to calibrate them as a green. So our thing is, we have to also to think about, is there, what we have learned from the market so far, from KfW, from your bank, from BP France, etc. What are their experience? Which criteria are practicable, can be used on the market to define what is a green loan, what is a green investment, etc., etc. Because what we have learned at the moment is that it is not so difficult to prove that a specific investment is green. You say, this is, I invest in an electric car fleet, I invest in renewable energy production, I invest in energy efficiency. This is doable. But what is super difficult is that to say, I give a general purpose loan to an SME, and the SME has to be proved to be green. And what we hear from banks, and this is what really concerns us, is that if we hand out a green loan, it is so more expensive for the company to fulfill the requirements and for the banks to collect this data, that a green loan is more expensive than a normal loan. And as long as we are in a situation where we are not able to incentivize green finance, but even penalize it, it will not work on the market. This is also the reason why in reality, most of the sustainable finance we see at the moment coming to the SME sector are supported by public schemes, yeah? Be it subsidies, be it grants, be it whatever it is. And here we have to tackle this. And therefore, I am in reality happy, partially happy about the discussion. Should SMEs be included in taxonomy and how we include SME in the taxonomy? If we go this direction, it is very clear that all studies we have seen so far show SMEs are not able to report according to a taxonomy. There are figures around where cost benefit is incredible on the negative side. Therefore, on the sustainable contribution side, we have to look into what already exists. If the Commission already accepts the criteria used by the European Investment Fund for the sustainability guarantee, why, if this is enough to be green, why it shouldn't be enough for taxonomy? We have in the first platform already the discussion about how to fulfill the sustainable, the social minimum standards. There's a good proposal. They say as long as you fulfill the European law and and you make a self-declaration that you stick to the UN human rights, then it's fine as long as there are no complaints. And now, and this will be, from my point of view, the biggest challenge, how to deal with the do no significant harm side. Because it is not enough if you prove to be somewhere green, if you have an enormous burden to prove that you do no significant harm to 6 other areas, or 5 other areas. And therefore, we really, so this is our now position, and it's not the official position, not from the platform, yeah? But why, to God's sakes, yeah, if an SME is only active in Europe, has all permits, fulfills all legal requirements, why there shouldn't the basic assumption in normal cases this should be enough to do no significant harm? Because if the European legislation allows to do significant harm, change legislation and can't go on the nerves of SMEs.
We'll come back to that, Clemence. but of course, you know, I think it is important to note we are learning by doing, and we are absolutely committed to continue to prove to make it work for everyone. The debate is what are the right steps to make it work, and that's what we're having in a platform. So a strong voice of what needs to happen is just what we need at this particular point. But of course, it's not just SMEs, it's also large institutions. And CDP is a large institution. So Guy, back to you. I'm keen for you to tell us the story of CDP's engagement with the taxonomy, how it's worked, what you've ended up doing, please.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Yeah, it was said from the very beginning we are starting the journey, and we embraced this journey 2 years ago when for financial undertakings it was required to start with the eligibility. Just to tell you how we are using taxonomy, it has to be said that we use in a double way. On one side, in fixing our strategy, because it's quite clear that if we want to decarbonizing our portfolio, the more we support our companies in decarbonizing their activities, the more our target is easy to be achieved. Secondly, we introduce the taxonomy in our processes, in our selection of daily financing. How? We have a model, just to be concrete, we have a model called Sustainable Development Assessment. This is complementary to the normal and standard assessment run in the financial institution and coming from legal compliance risk. But it's quite important because support our companies in passing from a risk-return approach to a risk-return impact approach. And now sustainability is entering in the daily decision. The Sustainable Development Assessment model is done by 3 parts, just to be easy to be understood. The analysis of the counterparts, the analysis of the object of the investment or the financing, and the analysis of the additionality. Additionality is something that is just typical of national promotional institution because we can intervene in the market just in case of market failure, just in case we want to support in collecting additional resources, meaning crowding in, and just in case we discover there's a gap in terms of know-how and competencies. While for the analysis of counterpart and the objects, we can provide an example that is just a starting point. I mean, it's just one way to read the regulation and taxonomy by telling you that when we analyze the counterparts, we analyze three things. First of all, the three most relevant topics, material topics of the counterpart, and we ask to our counterparts which are the metrics that are used, which is the track records, and if there's a target. Secondly, we analyze the governance of the counterparts, meaning do you have sustainability as something relevant for the board of directors at the managerial level? And then we analyze the policies in place. And when we analyze the policies in place, we are applying taxonomy because we scout the minimum safeguard clauses. We scout if there's policy in place in our counterparts in terms of human rights policy.
So you're driving a whole supply chain here. I mean, a whole chain of people you're lending to, I should say. There's a large pool of organisations being impacted by this through your work. Am I right? I mean, like, this isn't just CDP, is what you're telling us. This is a lot of organisations that you support.
Yeah, we support a medium large organization normally. We are indirect on the SMEs, but we are leading the market and we have to teach how to use taxonomy because this is the only way to promote a culture of taxonomy, a culture of this language, achieving also the SMEs. That's why when we analyze the objects, for instance, we ask if we are investing for the environment or for society or for innovation. And when we ask if we are investing or we are promoting a project for environment, we use exactly the taxonomy language, and not only for the NACE code that are taxonomy related, but for everyone. And that's it, the way we promote this culture, this common language, the way we instill in our companies, we teach our companies how to read the environment and how to protect it.
And did you say you're providing technical assistance or support for them as well? As in advice for how to implement that?
Yeah, we have also some teams that fully devoted for advice them, yeah.
So this is a fantastic example of how to apply this, but let's just find out how easy it was or how hard it was. Tell us about the speed bumps you had on the way. Were there any challenges in applying the taxonomy that we should all know about as we get involved?
I mean, in applying the taxonomy, we get some benefits and that are pretty clear. First of all, we increase the transparency for ourselves in understanding our portfolio, but also for our counterpart. Now we are sure that our projects are producing an impact, an ESG impact, and in case of the environment, the impact deserved by taxonomy. We improve how to communicate with the counterparts in order to be on the same side. But on the other end, we still have some challenges in adopting taxonomy because as NPIs, we are an institution that is subject to CSRD. So we are applying the CSRD by considering all the items in our balance sheets, meaning loans, debts, such as guarantees, investments. We have 3 different asset classes. I told something about them. Private corporation, more or less 35% of our portfolio. Public administration, meaning legal and local entities, regions, municipalities, 46% of our portfolio, and then equity, 80% of our portfolio. And it's quite evident that when we apply taxonomy on private corporations, we have to distinguish between general financing and specialized financing. And in case of general financing, it's quite easy to apply it because we get the data from the non-financial reporting of our counterparts. But for specialized financing, the model I was speaking about is quite relevant because we have to force in applying the 3-level test, responding correctly to the substantial contribution, do not significant harms, and minimum safeguard clauses. When we go on public administration, we have some difficulties because there's no NACE code, there are no force to NFRD, and for sure we have to find out proxy for the application of taxonomy, while it's quite easy for the part of equity. This is more or less where we are, but we are confident that the journey is a positive one. We are deeply using the tools that taxonomy is providing. On one side, the EU stakeholder engagement tools for dialoguing with taxonomy, with the platform, providing advice and getting feedback. We are using the EU Taxonomy user guide, the compass for seeing sector by sector.
This is what the Commission has published on the website, the Taxonomy
Yeah,
Compass.
just to be...
It's an open resource.
To create awareness in the audience that there are tools that are extremely useful. The compass for having evidence about the delegated data applying in each sectors, but also the calculator for reporting obligation and seeing what is, simulate what is eligible and what is aligned. So those are extremely useful tools that we are using, as well as FAQ. That's why in our 2 years of reporting, we adopt a prudent approach as suggested by the FAQ, because we calculate our eligibility based on proxy, using the NACE code of the counterpart much more than the one on the projects, for the reason that you can imagine, to open the stock and to go back, reading activities by activity, linking the NACE code, referring to taxonomy is a huge amount of work.
So it is a huge amount of work. There is guidance in these FAQs, frequently asked questions, which the Commission puts out and so on. I want to go to Clémence to respond, and then I will ask for questions, because we've got a big crowd here. And as there are more seats up the front here for those of you standing in the back. You don't need to stand all the time. But first, what would be the one thing you would like to see improved out of usability in the coming year?
The things the platform is working on is on quality of data and availability of data, and so we are waiting for all those data coming, because this will improve. But we are playing our part as leading actor in our country. That's why we are forcing a culture of taxonomy.
Well, that's a segue to you, Clémence. She's basically saying you're on the right track. But give us a sense of, given what Gerhard said, given what Gaia said, next step for usability.
No, I'll start with what you've described, because I think it's impressive indeed what you have put in place, in terms of engaging with your stakeholder and making sure they are onboarded in this taxonomy journey to probably understand the framework, which you're right, is a complex one, but it's part of the ambition, right, of the framework. And this part around, raising awareness, making sure we involve stakeholders and we make the best use possible of the current framework, I think is important. And you will see in the next few months, there will be a report actually from the platform, which is a compendium. So based on this outreach we have been doing, and based on the practices of a number of us within the platform, we've looked at some observations of the market. And I think it will be a very useful actually stock take of what is in place, and perhaps an invitation for us, for the various actors within the value chain, to continue to use the framework as it is today as best as possible. It's not just about, adding new regulation, changing the regulation, but it's already by starting to use it as it is today.
Use that phrase, as best as possible, is what you said, right?
Yeah.
In other words, you don't have to let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
But I think the platform, has been asked and will continue to work on usability. So that's very much our mandate. We know that there are CSRDs coming, SFDR will be revised, but we already have an impressive framework, I think, at EU level when we compare with other geographies. And I think you mentioned, the other taxonomies, other geographies. It's indeed always impressive to hear, the various views. When you go in another geography, or when you listen, we were, I think in the Middle East a few weeks ago, and there were lots of views on the EU taxonomy, lots of, ideas, comments, but I think that the fact that everybody knows about the taxonomy and everybody has views, just by itself shows, I would say, how leading it is in terms of trend. So first of all, yes, making the best use possible of the framework as it is today. And we'll continue for sure to work on enhancing the usability and on SMEs. Well, SMEs, I think it will be about indeed finding a simpler framework, but ensuring still that the integrity of the framework is is there. I think the taxonomy it's also the message, right, and the ambition from the European Union. So that will be, I guess, the work of the platform, and working very closely with you and the other representatives from SMEs to make sure that in terms of substantial contribution, in terms of DNSH, in terms of minimum social safeguards, we find the way to make it work, while, of course, bearing in mind the very specific constraint and the proportionality which is needed for SMEs.
Gurkhard's going to get a moment to respond in a minute. First, a few quick questions I'd like to take from the audience. Give me a sense of how many people have got a question here, and can you help share the microphones around? Yes, please. I've got 1, 2. I'm going to take a whole lot. You've got 30 seconds each, so keep it short and sharp, please. Over here, then over here. And a few more hands up to show me. Please, come on. Thank you. One over there, one here.
So thank you very much.
Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, of course. My name is Teresa Selvaggio from Lighting Europe, so the association representing lighting industry. Very interesting discussion, thank you. So I have to be quick, and I will go straight to the question. My question relates to the possible revision of technical screening criteria. I understand, of course, that the priority is currently usability, but we know that the platform has just launched the stakeholder request mechanism. If you can tell us a bit more on that, on the timeline that we can expect. We know that there is a first cutoff day on the 15th of December, so we have to hurry to reply to that. But it would be interesting and very important to understand what is the concrete expectations that we can have on it.
Thank you. Please.
Helmut von Glasenapp, European Long-Term Investors Association, representing national promotional banks and institutions. I have a question to Gaia and perhaps to Gerhard as well. Can we compare the problems, the issue, the challenges for SMEs with the ones of small municipalities? Because there are not 120, 30 millions in Europe, but they are all also numerous. It is the same. Should we work on small municipalities as well, or is it different?
Good question. Thank you. Please go.
Thank you. My name is Simona Pașar, and I work in the Commission in DG ECFIN. We work with green budgeting, and one of the questions that we always get from the other elephant in the room, which is the government, how can they apply the taxonomy at the government level? And we see high interest, but we cannot help them. So we thought that the platform could do something in this regard, because that's increasing the usability. Thanks.
Please go, stand up.
I'm Margot Médanger from La Poste. So my question is about how can you consider that products which are considered to be aligned do not exist on the market. For the transport sector, I have two concrete examples. It's about line haul transport, where only electric vehicles and hydrogen are considered to be aligned, and at the moment they are not technologically and economically available on the market. And second example about the tires that do not significant harm criteria on pollution. The tires which respect that the NHH principle are also not available on the market for light vehicles, which are nevertheless electric vehicles.
Good question. Any more questions? Quick. Okay. Thank you. Pass that back. If you want to answer any questions, please go. Clemence, Gerhard, Alain, Gaia. Otherwise, I'll answer a couple, but the main point is to get a few things in the agenda. I'm going to answer one to get going from La Poste. Well, 50% of all fleet cars sold in Germany last year were electric, as far as I know. We certainly have vehicles available in these, and that includes buses. I mean, Amazon has now shifted its fleet to electric vehicles, a large part of its fleet. So that part, however, your point about the tyres is absolutely correct. This is a problem. And we've drawn attention to that with FSMA. It's not at the moment of a platform responsibility to fix that one. It's one that we have asked FSMA to look at. I am hoping that they will come up with some guidance around this issue. So this is basically electric vehicle. La Poste buys electric vehicles. It can't count them as green because the tyres currently don't meet do no significant harm provision. So we've got issues like that. It's not perfect. It's a mess. And that is a few post offices have come to us that issue. We hope to get some improved guidance in the near future around that. But I will report your comments to FISMA as well, to add to the comments from other postal services around Europe who've been particularly frustrated by this particular issue. So that's one answer. Anyone else want to tackle any others or dive in, Gerhard?
Allow me to add a sentence to this point. Because 2 weeks ago, we have spoken with a German company. They bought electric fleets, and then they couldn't prove taxonomy alignment because they couldn't prove that the electricity they are buying is clean enough. 50% of electricity in Germany is currently produced by coal.
Yes, but your electric vehicles don't need to be buying green power. So you see, we're going to have to get an FAQ out about this, Gerhard.
No, but coming back to the general question, I think I'm fully aware that this is a work in progress. We have to develop practical solutions by learning by doing. We see that the technical criteria for what is green and not green is developing, and of course there's a certain convergence towards taxonomy alignments. But as I said before, if it is not simple enough that small enterprises can also prove this, and we have 93%, 22 million companies are micro enterprises, we will run into troubles. And what we see at the moment on the market is that the tickets you get on green finance are getting bigger, even by public promotional banks. They say, it is not feasible for us to do it for 200,000 or 500,000 euro. We start with 3 million, we start with 5 million, but most of the SMEs don't need 3 millions and they cannot work with it. Therefore, at the moment, as long as we have no other solutions, we have to make sure that at least for the micro enterprises, the traditional financing is ongoing without problems, because they will not be able to prove these alignments. We can go step by step there, but we have to do it in a way that we are not kicking SMEs, small enterprises, out of the market. So,
Good points. What about municipalities? Clemens, what are we going to say to this man of municipalities? I mean, clearly, we expect the platform over time to work for municipalities. It is challenging. And we have many municipalities who have adopted climate action plans across Europe. It's fantastic, including adaptation plans. I've also come across many municipalities, I've been interested to hear your experience, who are using the taxonomy as broad guidance for their plans and their activities going forward. Are there problems in doing that? Don't know, probably are. This is not strictly speaking an SG1, but do you want to make a comment on this one, Clemence?
Yeah, perhaps just a couple of words on how we are looking at public sector as well within the platform. So we have a number of representatives from the public sector. We know that there are some instruments which can be used by the public sector, but it's relatively limited because indeed it's not in scope of the taxonomy per se. So green bonds, for instance, are tools which can be used. And I guess in their exchange with other actors such as CDP, certainly, which regularly interact, it's also probably about voluntary use of the framework and to support the greening of the activities of municipalities as well. But perhaps, Gaia, you want to complement on that question?
Just a few words to Helmut on this. Could we compare municipalities and SMEs? Yes and no. If we look at them as counterpart, no. SME is much more similar to a corporation. The counterpart municipalities normally is not only a subject not subjected to an FRD, but has also other laws that should be coherent with. So in terms of counterpart, the model that we are applying is completely different. In terms of project financing, the project that we are selecting, yes, the same substantial contribution could be provided with the same target, the same criteria from SMEs as well as counterpart. Still difficult to decide how to apply the do not significant harm for both.
So there are challenges in making this work. It's not necessarily simple, and Gerhard has keep reminding us that we need to make it simple going forward. We're not quite at the point where we have a press button electric car yet. No. But we are at the point where we've got a reasonably common understanding being established across Europe about what it is we want to do around climate. And that is a big change. To take electric vehicles, we've said very clearly in the criteria, no, you don't count the emissions from the electricity grid. If you build a railway line in Poland, a fast rail, it's 17% lower emissions than aviation. Not very good. But we're saying, we have said in the taxonomy, that we do not count the electricity emissions for fast rail in Europe because we've got to build rail for the future because that grid will go green. We can't wait till the grid is going green before we build the railways of the future. And there's many things that we've sorted out of the taxonomy along those lines. So that is an enormous advance in terms of myth busting and, I'm going to say, heading off a lot of disinformation, which is dog climate action going forward. So at least we've made a start, but there are things we still have to fix. So make your voice heard on the things that have to be fixed is the key point. On the revision of technical screening criteria, no changes are going to happen to the Act in the foreseeable future. Because we're heading into elections, nothing's going to happen by December. Then there's the year wasted as Europe, because Europe has not yet sorted out how to have an election and keep business going. So we're frozen for a year while we get a new parliament and new commissioners. C'est la vie, and it'll be 2025 before we make any changes to the Act. If changes, or I should say issues, can be addressed through guidance, which is not strictly changing the legislation, that will happen, such as the tyres issue. It's what we expect. So that's where we are politically. That's the opportunity we have. If you think something needs to be fixed in it, there is scope definitely to make representations to FSMA and possibly to the platform, depending on the nature of the issue and our mandate at this stage, to make sure things keep moving and we improve as we go. I think that's the answer to all the questions that were asked. I would like to now, before we move to drinks, because I'm going to say CDP and CEPS have done a wonderful thing. They provided drinks downstairs for us, so I'm hanging out myself. But I want to get some final reflections about how we take this forward from where we are now. What does the future look like? Are we going to get there? I'm especially concerned to hear from Gerhard whether he's optimistic or pessimistic about this, because he's given us some tough messages. He's responded to Marcel, who has also given us a tough mandate. So this is, we're going off the grain here. We're not fighting grain. But of course, we've still got to make it work. And that's the hard part. And of course, Clémence is doing the hard work as the co-rapporteur, putting together all this. She's doing work. I'm just going to meetings and listening. It's fantastic for me. She's having to write. So I'm keen to get a sense of really of where we are, how we're going, and how optimistic you are that we are successfully going to address all these issues going forward, including the municipalities issue going forward. The questions. Clémence first.
So all the issue, I don't know. I mean, there are definitely a number of issues, but I think we have a clear roadmap, right, from Marcel in terms of what we need to focus on. This roadmap is now, I would say, even clearer because we've done this work of, reaching out to a number of stakeholders and better understanding how it's working in practice and how we can start to come up with solutions. So that will be, I think that was essential to structure our work plan for the next 18 months. So bear with us and keep posted on upcoming reports and upcoming proposals from the platform. I think what's important to keep in mind and probably for all of you to do is to be engaged with the taxonomy and be engaged with the framework more broadly. So, open the report from corporates. Perhaps if you're invested in an investment fund, well, look at the reporting from the fund and perhaps ask your financial advisor about it. I think it's also for all of us as part of this ecosystem at EU level to be part of making sure we transform the ecosystem by making sure it's not just reporting, but it's effectively tools which support the transformation of our business, our activities, and the way we are actually running the Europe at the moment.
Absolutely right. Gerhard.
I am more optimistic now than I have been a year ago because I've seen now that all involved parties which are relevant for SMEs have started to recognize that there is a specific problem which was denied 2 years ago in reality, or ignored, denied or ignored. Now we are in a situation that say, okay, we need to find answers, otherwise it will not work. And if it doesn't work, the consequence would be not that SMEs are dying in the market and go out to the market, they just will continue to do something which is can be not called sustainable or green finance. But if you are interested to have higher gas, make it possible that SMEs can be included. If you want to have higher rates in the sustainable portfolio in your banks, make it possible that you can define a loan as sustainable. And now I think what really changed, and this is the optimism, they know what's feasible, what is not feasible.
Thank you. Gaia, before I let you talk about your final reflections, I want to ask you a question that's been bugging me. What's happening in Italy generally, and how much is this being embraced? Because you're doing something, you've got all the supply chain, all the companies, all the companies that you're working with are acting and so on. Is government picking this up now? Are municipalities picking this up? I'm curious about the sense of change within Italy that you see.
We started a journey and we are seeing that companies are improving, even municipalities time by time. But it's a journey, we are cooperating. Winston Churchill said, give us a tool and we will finish the job. The tool is there. The extraordinary tool is the taxonomy, but it's in our hand and in our responsibility to implement it, to tell to the platform what is working and what is not. It's time to be responsible, and we are cooperating with the other to applying this extraordinary instrument.
Wonderful upbeat finish, but I meant to then offer you a chance to have parting reflections. But I do want to say thank you so much for being part of this and for hosting the session. From CDP's perspective, and of course CEPS, any last words and last thoughts before we wrap up the session today?
I think that these events and this kind of reflection should happen many, many times. The journey started and we are all progressing, and we can have a progress just if we are together in thinking how the taxonomy can work concretely.
Thank you. We have a huge job to do. We have to transform our economy, and it's not just making it slightly greener. We have to drastically transform it. We have to make fossil fuel emissions disappear in double time, faster, in fact, I'm going to say, than our current targets, fortunately. But we have to also make sure that all the other sectors that are contributing, industry, agriculture, property sectors, are also transformed in a way consistent of our climate targets. It's a vast job. This is simply guidance. The taxonomy, is about a shopping list of the future, is about the sort of common language you need so we all work in the same direction. But what really counts is action. What really counts is the lending that CDP does in the context of the taxonomy. As you say, it's a tool for action. Whatever happens, it's action that really counts now. Ambitious, robust action, and also not just action in Europe. I want to stress the taxonomy is a global good, is having a global impact. We're getting taxonomies around the world. We need to change our neighborhood. We need to support countries in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia to change. We need to have a common project globally. It's the only way we create a future for our kids. Wow, that's something for all of us. We are lucky, at least, we get a chance to work on this. The bulk of the world doesn't get a chance. They just have to take what happens. At least we have something we can do. I'm going to wish you great luck and good fortune on that mission to transform our planet and to make sure Europe leads the way and doesn't lag in here. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for the good work you're going to do. And thank you to our speakers on the stage, of course. Drinks are down the stairs. Please do join us. And by all means, use the opportunity to grill Gerhard, grill Clemence, and grill Gaia.